What if the Northern Lords refused to crown Robb Stark as king in the North and called for Jon Snow instead? Let's explore the depths of it in the video. The great hall of Riverrun echoes with raised voices and the scrape of steel on stone. Banners hang heavy from the rafters. The grey direwolf of Stark, the leaping trout of Tully, the twin towers of Frey. The combined Northern and Riverlands forces have gathered to decide their next course of action and which claimant to support. For hours they have argued about whether to support Stannis Baratheon, Renly Baratheon, or acknowledge Joffrey's legitimacy. Robb Stark sits at the high table, his auburn hair catching the firelight. At 15, he has the look of his mother about him, the sharp cheekbones of the Tullys, the blue eyes that burn with determination. Yet for all his victories on the field, he remains young. Too young, some whisper. Catelyn Stark watches her son from her place beside him, her own auburn hair now touched with silver at 34. She sees the weight of command settling on shoulders still too narrow to bear it. Every line in his face speaks of the burden he has carried since Ned's death. She knows what must come next. The Lords will proclaim him king, as is his right. Theon Greyjoy stands behind Robb's chair, his dark eyes scanning the assembled lords. At 19, he has grown tall and lean, his black hair swept back from a face marked by years of being neither fully Stark nor truly Greyjoy. He knows these men better than most, their ambitions, their fears, their loyalties. What he sees in their faces troubles him. A Northern Lord rises from his seat among the gathered bannermen. His voice cuts through the noise like a blade. "I'll hear no more of Southern kings," he declares. "Stannis, Renly, Joffrey, what are they to us? The North has bled enough for Southern lords who know nothing of our ways." Murmurs of agreement ripple through the Northern contingent, but the Lord is not finished. "Robb Stark has led us well," he continues, "but he is young, untested. The North needs a king with seasoned judgment, a man who knows duty and honor as his father did." Catelyn feels ice form in her veins. She knows where this is heading before the words leave his lips. "Jon Snow," the Lord says. "Ned Stark's bastard has served at the wall. He knows the threats we face. He has the blood of Winterfell in his veins, and he's old enough to understand the weight of a crown." The hall erupts. Some lords shout their outrage. Others nod slowly, considering. The very suggestion sends shock waves through the assembly. A bastard? King in the North? He has no legal claim. Catelyn rises, her voice sharp with fury. "Jon Snow is a bastard. My son is the rightful heir to Winterfell and the North. Robb is Ned Stark's legitimate son and heir." "Aye, he's legitimate," another Northern Lord calls out. "But legitimacy doesn't always make for good kings. The boy has heart, but does he have the stomach for what's coming? Jon Snow was raised by Ned Stark, same as any true-born son. He learned honor and duty at the same table." Robb's hand tightens on the arm of his chair. His knuckles go white. The room divides before his eyes. Some lords looking at him with doubt they had never shown before, others watching to see how he'll respond to this challenge to his very birthright. "Jon took the black," Robb says, quietly, but his voice carries in the sudden hush. "He swore vows to the Night's Watch. He is my brother, and I love him, but he cannot be king in the North while he serves on the wall." "Vows can be set aside," the First Lord argues. "If the realm needs him, if the North needs him, there's precedent for releasing men from the Watch in times of great need." Theon shifts behind Robb's chair. He has seen Jon Snow train in the yard at Winterfell, has watched him struggle with being neither fully part of the family nor truly apart from it. The idea of Jon as king seems impossible, yet the lords speak of it as if it's merely a matter of sending ravens north. "This is madness," Catelyn snaps. "You would set aside the rightful heir for a bastard? What precedent does that set? What lord's son will be safe if bastards can claim their birthright by popular acclaim? What safety is there if we crown a boy who cannot hold the North together?" Another voice challenges. "The Lannisters will come for us with everything they have. We need strength, not legitimacy." The argument fractures along lines that had seemed solid moments before. Some northern lords rally to Robb, speaking of his victories, his courage, his rightful claim. Others voice doubts that had perhaps festered in silence, about his youth, his inexperience, his ability to unite not just the North, but their new Riverlands allies. Robb looks around the hall and sees his kingdom slipping away before it has even been declared. These men had followed him this far, had bled with him, had trusted him with their sons' lives. Now they question whether he should wear a crown he has not yet claimed. "Send ravens to Castle Black," one of the northern lords declares. "Let Jon Snow speak for himself. If he will renounce his vows and take the crown, then we have our king in the north." "And if Robb Stark is to be set aside so easily," Catelyn says, her voice cold as winter, "then perhaps the north deserves whatever king it gets." The words hang in the air like smoke from a burned field. For the first time since Ned's death, the unity of the North stands broken. Not by Lannister swords or southern politics, but by their own choices. Robb says nothing. What is there to say? The lords have spoken. They want his bastard brother over him. The boy who had dreamed of being king finds himself wondering if he ever truly wanted the crown at all, or if he had simply accepted it as his burden to bear. The hall settles into an uneasy quiet as the magnitude of what has just been proposed sinks in. Somewhere north of the wall, Jon Snow tends his duties in the Night's Watch, unaware that hundreds of miles away, lords are debating whether to make him a king. For the first time in 300 years, the North stands poised to crown a bastard as its sovereign. The very idea should be impossible. Yet in this hall, on this night, impossible seems to be the only option left. The ravens will fly north come morning. The rest will be up to Jon Snow. The raven arrives at Castle Black on black wings, circling the Lord Commander's tower twice before settling in the rookery. The maester tends to it with practiced hands, unrolling the small scroll tied to its leg. Within the hour, Jon Snow finds himself summoned to Jorah Mormont's solar. The old bear sits behind his heavy wooden desk, the letter spread before him like a map of troubles yet to come. At 68, Lord Commander Mormont has weathered many storms, but the lines around his grey eyes speak of burdens that grow heavier with each passing year. His weathered hands, scarred from decades of service, hold the parchment steady as Jon enters. "Sit, boy," Mormont says, his voice rough as old leather. "We need to talk." Jon takes the offered chair, his dark hair still damp from sword practice in the yard. At 15, he has grown taller since taking his vows, but he remains lean, all sinew and sharp angles. His grey eyes, so like his father's, study the Lord Commander's face, reading the gravity there. "News from the south?" Jon asks. He knows that look. It's the same expression Mormont wore when word came of Ned Stark's death. "Aye, from Riverrun." Mormont pushes the letter across the desk. "Read it yourself." Jon's eyes scan the words, and with each line, the world seems to shift beneath him. The northern lords refuse to crown Robb. They call for Jon Snow instead. They want him to be king in the north. "This cannot be real," Jon says quietly, setting the letter down as if it might burn him. I'm a bastard. I have no legal claim to anything. That's what I thought too, Mormont replies. But it seems the northern lords think differently. They value your character over your birth. Your time here has impressed them, even from a distance. Jon stands and moves to the narrow window, looking out over the wall. The ancient ice barrier stretches endlessly east and west, a monument to duty and sacrifice. Approximately 600 brothers defend this wall, and every one of them has sworn the same vows Jon spoke in the Godswood months ago. I took the black, Jon says. I swore vows, sacred vows. Aye, you did. Mormont's chair creaks as he leans back. Night gathers and now my watch begins. I shall take no wife, hold no lands, father, no children. I shall wear no crowns and win no glory. The words hang between them like a blade. Jon has recited them countless times, felt their weight settle on his shoulders like iron chains. But now they sound different. Now they sound like prison bars. The vows are considered permanent and sacred, Jon says, as much to remind himself as to answer Mormont. Only death traditionally releases a man from his vows. Traditionally, aye. Mormont stands and moves to stand beside Jon at the window. But these are not traditional times. The realm bleeds. The North may need you more than the Wall does. The Night's Watch takes no part in the politics of the Seven Kingdoms, Jon counters. You taught me that yourself, Lord Commander. Mormont is quiet for a long moment, watching the wind blow snow across the Wall's summit. I did, and I meant it. But what happens when the kingdoms tear themselves apart? What happens to our oath to protect the realm, if there's no realm left to protect? The question strikes Jon like a physical blow. He has never considered that the vows might conflict with each other. Protect the realm, but take no part in its politics. Serve the Watch, but what if serving the Watch means abandoning the realm to chaos? They're boys, Jon says finally. Robb is 15, same as me. How can boys rule kingdoms? Your father was 16 when he fought in Robert's rebellion, Mormont points out. Age doesn't make kings, Jon. Choice does. And it seems the northern lords have made their choice. Word spreads through Castle Black like wildfire. By evening, every brother in the castle knows that Jon Snow has been called to kingship. The reactions vary as widely as the men themselves. In the common hall, grizzled veterans argue over bowls of stew. Some scoff at the very idea. A bastard king, crowned by lords desperate enough to try anything. Others nod thoughtfully, remembering Jon's conduct since he took the black, his steady nature, his willingness to do what's needed. He's got the look of Ned Stark about him, one ranger says. And the honor, too. Better a bastard with honor than a lord without it. Vows are vows, another replies. You break them once. What's to stop you breaking them again? How do we trust a man who abandons his sworn brothers for a crown? The debate echoes in every corner of the castle. The training yard, the armory, the stables, everywhere men gather. They speak of Jon Snow and the choice before him. Jon himself says little. He goes about his duties as if nothing has changed, training recruits in the morning, standing watch on the wall at night. But those who know him well see the change. Sam Tarly notices how Jon stares north towards the haunted forest, as if seeking answers in the endless darkness. The stewards see how he picks at his food, his mind clearly elsewhere. What will you do? Sam asks one evening as they walk the battlements. Jon stops and grips the wall's ancient ice, feeling the cold burn his palms through his gloves. I don't know. I've been a bastard all my life, Sam. Bastards don't get to choose their fate. But you're not just any bastard now, Sam says gently. You're Jon Snow, and the North wants you as their king. The North wants someone, Jon corrects. They're desperate. They've lost Ned Stark, and they don't trust Robb to hold the kingdom together. I'm just the next option. Maybe. Or maybe they see something in you that you don't see in yourself. That night, Jon lies awake in his narrow bed, staring at the ceiling. Outside, the wind howls through the gaps in the wall, a sound like the voices of the dead. He thinks of his father, of the honor that guided Ned Stark through every choice he made. What would his father do? But his father never faced a choice like this. Ned Stark was never a bastard offered a crown. He was never torn between two oaths, one to the Watch, one to the realm. The next morning brings another raven, then another. Word of the Northern Lord's proposal spreads south, and the responses come swift and harsh. King Joffrey declares Jon Snow a traitor to the crown simply for being considered. The Lannisters promise death to any who support a bastard's claim. They're afraid, Mormont observes as they read the threats together. A bastard king threatens everything they believe about legitimacy and bloodline. If Jon Snow can be king, what's to stop other bastards from claiming their father's seats? Is that what this is about? Jon asks. Am I just a symbol of something larger? Aren't all kings? Mormont replies. Robert Baratheon wasn't just a man. He was the symbol of rebellion against Aerys Targaryen. Your brother Robb isn't just a boy. He's the symbol of northern independence. Kings are always more than men, Jon. The question is what you choose to symbolize. Jon knows the Lord Commander is right, but knowing doesn't make the choice easier. Every path before him leads to breaking an oath. If he stays with the Night's Watch, he abandons the North in its hour of need. If he accepts the crown, he breaks the most sacred vows a man can swear. As the day wears on, more ravens arrive. Some bring support from minor northern houses. Others bring condemnation from southern lords. The castle buzzes with tension, 600 men watching to see what their bastard brother will decide. Jon Snow stands on the wall that evening, looking north toward the lands beyond. Somewhere out there, ancient enemies stir. The wildlings grow bolder. The long night may be coming again. The Night's Watch needs every man it can get. But south of the wall, the north bleeds. His father's people face war and division. His brother struggles with a crown he may never wear. His sister sits captive in King's Landing, a hostage to southern politics. 2 duties call to him. 2 oaths demand his service. And Jon Snow, bastard of Winterfell, must choose which oath to honor and which to break. The wind picks up, carrying the scent of winter and the promise of harder choices to come. On the wall, duty is supposed to be simple. But nothing is simple anymore, and the bastard who dreamed of honor finds himself facing a choice that will define not just his life, but the fate of the North itself. The ravens have delivered their messages. Now Jon Snow must deliver his answer. The great hall of Riverrun has become a battlefield without swords. 3 days have passed since the Northern Lords first spoke Jon Snow's name, and the divisions have only deepened. The combined Northern and Riverlands forces that once stood united now cluster in separate groups, whispering behind raised hands and casting suspicious glances across the stone floor. Robb Stark sits at the high table, but the seat feels less secure with each passing hour. His auburn hair catches the morning light streaming through the tall windows, and his blue eyes, so like his mother's, scan the assembled lords with growing unease. At 15, he has learned to read the faces of men who follow him into battle. What he sees now troubles him more than any Lannister army. Catelyn Stark stands beside her son's chair, her own auburn hair bound back in a severe knot that emphasizes the sharp lines of her face. At 34, She has weathered the storms of marriage, motherhood, and war. But this challenge to her son's birthright strikes deeper than any blade. Her blue eyes burn with protective fury as she watches lords who once swore fealty to House Stark now question everything she holds sacred. "The matter is simple," declares a river lord from the Mallister contingent. "Robb Stark is the rightful heir of Ned Stark. He has led us to victory after victory. Why do we speak of setting him aside for a bastard? Because victories mean nothing if we cannot hold what we've won," counters a gruff northern lord. "The boy has heart, but does he have the wisdom to be king?" Jon Snow was raised in the same hall, learned the same lessons, but he's had time to grow into them. The accusation hangs in the air like smoke from a funeral pyre. The suggestion that Robb lacks the maturity for kingship strikes at the heart of every doubt that has festered since Ned's death. Theon Greyjoy moves from his position near the wall, his dark hair swept back from sharp features that speak of his island heritage. At 19, he has grown into his height, lean and quick, caught forever between the world of his birth and the world that raised him. He supports the Stark claim. But which Stark? "I've known both of them since we were boys," Theon says, his voice carrying clearly through the hall. "Robb and Jon trained together, learned together, but they're different men now." "How so?" asks a Riverlands lord. Theon chooses his words carefully. "Robb has the fire of command. He sees what needs to be done and does it. But Jon thinks before he acts. He weighs the cost of every choice." "You make it sound as if thinking is a weakness," Catelyn interjects, her voice sharp as winter steel. "My son has led these armies to victory precisely because he combines action with wisdom." "Has he?" The question comes from an older northern lord, his weathered face grim. "Or has he been fortunate? Fortune runs out, my lady. Wisdom endures." The words strike Catelyn like a physical blow. She rises from her chair, her full height impressive even among the assembled lords. "You dare question my son's leadership? Who among you has won more battles? Who has gained more loyalty from his men?" "No one questions Robb's courage or his victories," the northern lord replies carefully. "But courage and victories don't make kings. Look at Robert Baratheon, all the courage in the world, but he nearly bankrupted the realm and left us with Joffrey." "So you would replace one boy king with another?" Catelyn's voice rises. "Jon Snow is the same age as my son. If youth is your concern, what makes a bastard more mature than a true-born heir?" "The wall," comes the answer from multiple voices. "The Night's Watch teaches men discipline, sacrifice, duty. Jon Snow has learned to put the realm before his own desires." "The realm?" Catelyn laughs, but there's no humor in it. "A bastard putting the realm first by abandoning his sacred vows? What kind of discipline is that?" Theon watches the exchange with growing unease. He has seen Catelyn's fierce protectiveness before, but this cuts deeper. This isn't just about her son's claim. It's about legitimacy itself, about the order that keeps bastards in their place and true-born children secure in theirs. "Perhaps," Theon says carefully. "The question isn't which Stark should be king, but whether the North needs a king at all right now." The hall falls silent. The suggestion is so unexpected that even the most heated arguments stop. "What do you mean?" Robb asks. "I mean, maybe we're moving too fast," Theon explains. "The war isn't over. The Lannisters still hold King's Landing, still have your sister. Maybe we should focus on winning the war before we decide who gets the crown." It's a reasonable suggestion, but it falls flat in a room full of men who have already chosen sides. The political crisis has taken on a life of its own, and neutrality no longer seems possible. The war and the crown are the same question, argues a northern lord. We need a king to unite the north. Without that unity, we lose the war. And unity comes from legitimate rule, adds another. The lords follow strength, yes, but they also follow law. Robb Stark is the lawful heir. Law? Scoffs a river lord who has thrown his support behind the Jon Snow proposal. What law made Robert Baratheon king? He took the throne by force and right of conquest. Jon Snow could do the same. Catelyn's face goes white with rage. You compare my son to a usurper? Robert had a claim through his grandmother. Jon Snow has nothing but the accident of his father's blood. But what blood it is, comes the quiet response. Ned Stark's blood. And Ned Stark was worth 10 kings. The invocation of Ned's name changes the tenor of the room. Every man here owes something to the memory of the Wolf of Winterfell. His honor, his sacrifice, his death, all of it weighs on the choice before them. My husband is dead, Catelyn says, her voice breaking slightly. He died defending the realm and the rightful king. Would you dishonor his memory by setting aside his legitimate heir for a bastard? Would you make his sacrifice meaningless? No one wants to dishonor Lord Stark, says a northern lord gently. But maybe honoring him means choosing the son who best embodies his values, not the one who inherited his name. The words hit their target. Robb flinches as if struck, and for a moment his carefully maintained composure cracks. The suggestion that Jon is more like their father, more worthy of Ned's legacy, cuts deeper than any questioning of his military skills or political judgment. I am my father's son, Robb says quietly, but his voice carries to every corner of the hall. I carry his name, his blood, his responsibilities. I will not abandon them, because it might be easier to crown a bastard instead. And what if the bastard doesn't want the crown? Theon asks. What if Jon Snow chooses to stay with the Night's Watch? Then what? It's a question no one has satisfactorily answered. The entire debate assumes Jon will accept the crown if offered. But what if he doesn't? What if his vows mean more to him than their offers of kingship? Then we crown Robb and get on with the war, says a Riverlands lord. But we send ravens north first. Let Jon Snow speak for himself. And if he says yes, Catelyn demands, if he agrees to break his sacred vows for a crown, what kind of king does that make him? The kind who puts the realm before personal honor, comes the reply. Sometimes that's what kings have to do. The debate continues, but the lines are drawn now. Some lords support Robb's established claim and proven leadership. Others believe Jon Snow offers the maturity and wisdom the North needs in these dark times. Still others simply want to delay the decision until the immediate crisis passes. But delay is a luxury they may not have. Every day that passes without a clear king weakens their position. The Lannisters will not wait for the North to resolve its succession crisis. They will strike while the North stands divided. Theon looks between Catelyn's fierce protectiveness and the growing determination of Jon's supporters. He thinks of the boys he knew at Winterfell, Robb the bold and confident heir, Jon the thoughtful bastard, always standing slightly apart. Both good men, both worthy in their own ways. But which one can hold the North together when the real test comes? The question haunts the hall as the debate stretches into the afternoon. Outside Riverrun's walls, armies wait for orders. Ravens fly south with news of northern division. Enemies sharpen their blades. And in the great hall, the future of the North hangs in the balance, decided by men who love House Stark too much to agree on which Stark deserves their loyalty. The council remains broken, and with each hour that passes, the cracks spread deeper. Soon they will have to choose unity under a questioned king or division in pursuit of the perfect one. Either way, the North will never be the same. The Red Keep thrums with activity as ravens arrive from across the Seven Kingdoms, their dark wings bearing news that sets the capital ablaze with whispered conversations. In the Iron Throne Room, King Joffrey Baratheon sits upon the twisted seat of Aegon the Conqueror, his golden hair catching the light that streams through the high windows. At 12, he has the handsome features of his Lannister heritage, but his green eyes burn with a cruelty that makes even hardened knights uneasy. The latest raven from the north has just been read aloud, and the boy king's reaction is immediate and vicious. A bastard? Joffrey's voice cracks slightly, the way boys' voices do when they're caught between childhood and manhood. They want to crown a bastard over their rightful king, over me. The royal advisors gathered before the Iron Throne exchange careful glances. The news from Riverrun has spread through King's Landing like wildfire. The Northern Lords refuse to crown Robb Stark, and instead call for Jon Snow, Ned Stark's bastard, to be their king. For a moment, even the capital's political masters are at a loss for words. "It is unprecedented, Your Grace," ventures the Grand Maester, his chains jangling softly as he steps forward. "A bastard has never been crowned king in the north. The very suggestion threatens the natural order." Joffrey leans forward on the Iron Throne, his boyish features twisted with rage and something that might be fear. The idea that bastards could claim crowns strikes at the heart of his own legitimacy, though none dare voice that particular concern aloud. "Threats to the natural order must be crushed," Joffrey declares, his voice gaining strength. "If we allow this bastard to steal a crown, what's to stop every bastard in the Seven Kingdoms from claiming their father's seats?" "Nothing, Your Grace," agrees one of the royal advisors, seeing the direction of the king's thoughts. "Which is why this rebellion must be ended swiftly. The longer we allow it to continue, the more dangerous the precedent becomes." Joffrey grins, and the expression transforms his handsome face into something cold and predatory. "Then we end it. But first," he pauses, his green eyes gleaming with malicious pleasure, "bring me Sansa Stark." The order sends a chill through the throne room. Every man present knows what it means when the boy king calls for his hostages. Sansa Stark enters the throne room, flanked by guards, her auburn hair braided in the southern fashion, her blue eyes carefully empty of expression. At 12, she has learned to hide her thoughts behind a mask of perfect courtesy. But those who know how to look can see the tension in her shoulders, the way her hands tremble slightly at her sides. She has grown taller in her captivity, her Tully beauty beginning to show even at her young age. But there's a wariness about her now that speaks of lessons learned the hard way. The innocent girl who came south with her father is gone, replaced by someone who knows exactly how precarious her position has become. "Sansa," Joffrey says, his tone deceptively pleasant. "Sweet Sansa, I have such interesting news from the north." Sansa curtsies perfectly, her voice steady when she speaks. "Your Grace? It seems your brothers can't decide which one should be king," Joffrey continues, his smile widening. "Robb the Wolf or Jon the Bastard? Such a difficult choice, don't you think?" The words hit Sansa like physical blows, but she doesn't flinch. "I'm sure I don't know what your Grace means." "Oh, I think you do." Joffrey rises from the Iron Throne, taking his time as he descends the steps. "Your bastard brother wants to steal your true-born brother's crown. How does that make you feel?" Sansa keeps her eyes downcast. "I serve at your Grace's pleasure. The affairs of traitors are not my concern." The answer is perfectly crafted, loyal enough to avoid immediate punishment, neutral enough to avoid betraying her family. But Joffrey isn't interested in careful words today. "The affairs of traitors," he muses. stopping just close enough to make Sansa uncomfortable. Yes, that's what they are, aren't they? Traitors. All of them. Your father was a traitor. Your brothers are traitors. And now they fight each other like dogs over a bone. One of the royal advisors steps forward, sensing opportunity. Your Grace, this division in the north presents us with a unique advantage. A house divided against itself cannot stand. We should exploit this weakness. Joffrey turns away from Sansa, his attention caught by the strategic implications. How? Several approaches, Your Grace. First, we could send ravens to both claimants, offering to recognize whichever one submits to your authority. Let them compete for your favor. And encourage them to destroy each other in the process, adds another advisor. Civil war in the north serves our interests. Joffrey's eyes light up with malicious glee. Yes, let the wolf pack tear itself apart, but what if they reconcile? What if they unite against us? That's where Lady Sansa becomes valuable, the first advisor explains, casting a meaningful glance at the girl. She's leverage against both claimants, Robb Stark's sister, but also Jon Snow's, well, his father's daughter. Neither can afford to lose her. The casual way they discuss her fate makes Sansa's blood run cold, but she forces herself to remain motionless. She has learned that showing fear only encourages them. Joffrey considers this, pacing back and forth before the Iron Throne. Send word to the loyal houses in the north. Tell them that any lord who submits to either pretender will be branded a traitor and face the full wrath of the Iron Throne. But any who remain loyal to their rightful king will be richly rewarded. And the Riverlands, Your Grace. The same message. Let them know that harboring northern rebels makes them rebels themselves. Joffrey's voice grows stronger with each word, feeding off the power of command. Ready our armies. If the North wants to crown bastards, they'll learn the price of defying their king. The advisors bow and begin to disperse, already planning the implementation of the king's commands. But Joffrey isn't finished. Wait, he calls, his attention turning back to Sansa. I have a special message for the North. Sansa's mask slips for just a moment, fear flickering in her blue eyes before she controls herself. You're going to write to your brothers, Joffrey announces with satisfaction. Both of them. You're going to tell them exactly what will happen to their sweet sister if they don't submit to their rightful king. Your Grace, Sansa says carefully. I'm not certain what to write. Oh, don't worry. Joffrey's grin turns predatory. I'll tell you exactly what to say. Word for word. As the king begins dictating his message of threats and ultimatums, Sansa realizes, with growing horror, that her captivity has entered a new phase. She's no longer just a hostage. She's a weapon to be used against the very brothers who might try to save her. Meanwhile, ravens are already being prepared in the Red Keep's rookery. Messages will fly to every corner of the realm, announcing that the crown will crush any who support the Northern Rebellion. The lords who might have hesitated to choose sides will be forced to decide, loyalty to the Iron Throne or destruction. Joffrey returns to the Iron Throne, his young face flushed with excitement at the prospect of war. He sees only opportunity in the Northern crisis, a chance to crush his enemies once and for all, to prove that kings who threaten his authority will face swift and brutal consequences. But the boy king, for all his cruelty and cunning, cannot see the larger forces at work. He cannot understand that some divisions, once opened, cannot be healed by threats or violence. He cannot grasp that by pushing the North toward desperation, he may be creating the very unity he seeks to prevent. In the days that follow, the capital becomes a hive of military preparation. Orders go out to loyal houses across the realm. Armies are mustered. Weapons are sharpened. The boy king's war machine prepares to crush the north beneath its heel. And in her chambers in the Red Keep, Sansa Stark writes letter after letter under close supervision, each one carrying threats that make her stomach turn. She has become a tool of war, wielded by a boy who delights in others' pain. The North faces division from within and pressure from without. The Game of Thrones has entered a new phase, and the stakes grow higher with each passing day. But Joffrey, in his youth and arrogance, has made one crucial miscalculation. He believes that fear alone can hold a kingdom together, that threats and violence are enough to maintain his rule. He is about to learn otherwise. The Great Hall of Winterfell feels too large for the boy who sits at its head table. Bran Stark's brown hair falls across his dark eyes as he struggles to read the latest Raven scroll, the parchment trembling slightly in his small hands. At 8 years old, he should be running through the castle yards, climbing towers, practicing with wooden swords. Instead, he sits paralyzed from the waist down in a high-backed chair that dwarfs his small frame, trying to understand words that will shape the future of the North. The Raven bears news from Riverrun, and each line makes the burden of leadership feel heavier on shoulders far too young to bear it. The Northern Lords refuse to crown Robb. They want Jon instead. They expect an 8-year-old boy to choose between his brothers. "My lord," says one of the castle's senior advisors, his weathered face creased with concern. "The lords await your response." Bran looks up from the letter, his dark eyes reflecting a wisdom forced upon him by tragedy and responsibility. The fall from the tower that stole the use of his legs also stole his childhood, replacing it with lessons in governance he never wanted to learn. "What response can I give?" Bran asks, his voice still carrying the higher pitch of a child. "I'm 8 years old. What do I know of crowns and kings?" "You know right from wrong, my lord," the advisor replies gently. "You carry the Stark name. That means something, even if you're young." Winterfell itself seems to press down upon them as they speak. The ancient castle's stones have witnessed 8,000 years of Stark rule. But now they shelter only a skeleton garrison and a paralyzed boy who must somehow hold the North's heart together while its armies fight far away. Another advisor steps forward, his expression grave. "The garrison is fewer than 200 men, my lord. If the southern lords decide to march north while our armies are away, the implication hangs in the air like smoke from a dying fire. Winterfell is vulnerable, defended by old men and boys, while its strength bleeds away on southern battlefields. Bran understands the danger, even if he cannot fully grasp its implications." "Have any houses declared for Jon?" Bran asks, trying to keep his voice steady. "House Umber has sent ravens suggesting support," one advisor reports. "Some of the mountain clans seem interested, but most wait to see how the wind blows." "And for Robb?" "House Manderley holds firm. Lord Glover's sons speak for their father in support of the rightful heir. The debate divides every hall in the north." Bran closes his eyes, feeling the weight of 8,000 years pressing down on his small frame. The castle around him stands empty of the laughter that once filled its halls. Robb is gone to war. Jon is at the wall. Sansa is a captive in King's Landing. Arya is missing, possibly dead. Rickon is too young to understand any of this. He is alone. "What would father do?" Bran whispers, more to himself than to the assembled advisers. "Lord Eddard would do what honor demanded," comes the gentle reply. "The question is what honor demands now." The question torments Bran through the long afternoon. Ravens arrive with each hour, bringing news and demands from across the north. Some houses pledge loyalty to Winterfell and its young lord. Others hedge their bets, offering support to the rightful Stark king, without specifying which one they mean. Still others openly question whether a paralyzed child can speak for the North in its hour of greatest need. Each message feels like a weight added to Bran's chest, making it harder to breathe. He thinks of Robb, always so confident and strong, born to command. Then he thinks of Jon, steady and thoughtful, always watching from the edges, but seeing everything. Both his brothers are worthy in their own ways. How can he choose between them? "My lord," another advisor ventures, "perhaps we should consider the practical matters. If the lords crown Jon Snow, he must first be released from his Night's Watch vows. That process could take months, if it happens at all. Meanwhile, the realm burns." "And if they crown Robb?" Bran asks. "Then we have a king, immediately, but one that half the northern lords question. Division weakens us all." The cruel mathematics of power play out before Bran like pieces on a game board he's too young to fully understand. Every choice leads to consequences he can barely imagine, yet he must choose anyway. A commotion in the courtyard interrupts his thoughts. Through the great hall's windows, Bran can see riders approaching under a banner he doesn't recognize. His guards are few, but they position themselves carefully as the strangers enter Winterfell's gates. "Southern lords," one advisor murmurs, his hand moving instinctively toward his sword. "Flying Lannister colors." The messenger who enters the hall minutes later bears a scroll sealed with the royal arms. His voice carries clearly in the vast space as he reads King Joffrey's proclamation. Any who support either northern pretender will be branded traitors and face the crown's full wrath. Bran listens with growing horror as the message continues. Threats against any who harbor rebels. Promises of destruction for houses that support northern independence. And beneath it all, barely veiled threats against Sansa, his sister, held captive in the capital. "Tell your king," Bran says, when the messenger finishes, his young voice carrying surprising strength, that Winterfell stands with House Stark, always. The messenger's face hardens. "Even if it means your sister's life?" The question hits Bran like a physical blow. The paralysis that keeps him bound to his chair suddenly seems like nothing compared to this paralysis of choice. Save Sansa by abandoning his brothers, or honor his family by dooming his sister? "My sister would want me to do what's right," Bran says finally, though his voice wavers. House Stark keeps faith with House Stark. The messenger departs with Bran's defiance, but his words echo in the great hall long after he's gone. The boy lord has chosen a side, his family's side, but the cost may be more than he can bear. As evening falls over Winterfell, Bran sits alone in the great hall, surrounded by empty chairs where his family should sit. The carved direwolves that decorate the hall's pillars seem to watch him with stone eyes, waiting to see if this youngest Stark can prove worthy of their legacy. His paralyzed legs are hidden beneath the high table, but Bran can feel their weight anyway. The weight of limitation, of vulnerability, of a body that cannot match the strength his position demands. Yet he is still a Stark, still the blood of Winterfell. "Summon the ravens," he tells his advisors. "I'll write to Robb and Jon both. They need to know what Joffrey threatens. They need to understand what we face." The letters Bran dictates that night are carefully crafted, each word chosen with the wisdom of a boy forced to grow up too fast. He doesn't choose between his brothers. That burden belongs to the lords who will crown the next king in the north, but he makes clear that Winterfell stands ready to defend whichever brother the north chooses, regardless of the cost. As the ravens fly into the darkness, carrying his words south to Riverrun and north to Castle Black, Bran Stark sits in his great chair, and tries to be the lord Winterfell needs. He cannot walk, cannot fight, cannot command armies like his brothers. But he can choose to stand firm when the world tries to break him. He can choose honor when others choose fear. And sometimes that choice is the most important kind of strength. The 80-year-old Lord of Winterfell has taken his stand. Now he must live with the consequences, whatever they may be. Winter is coming, and Bran Stark, paralyzed, alone but unbroken, prepares to face it as a Stark should. With courage, with honor, and with the knowledge that some things are worth any price, even if that price is everything he has left to lose. The Lord Commander's Solar at Castle Black has never hosted a debate like this one. Ancient precedents clash with desperate necessity as the senior officers of the Night's Watch gather around Jorah Mormont's heavy wooden table. Maps of the wall spread across its surface, but tonight the maps cannot help them navigate the crisis that threatens to tear their ancient order apart. Jon Snow stands near the narrow window, his dark hair catching the firelight as he stares north toward the haunted forest. At 15, his lean frame has grown taller since taking the black, but his grey eyes carry a weight that has nothing to do with age. The raven from Winterfell sits crumpled in his hand. Bran's letter, warning of Joffrey's threats, of the danger facing their family, of the choice that grows more urgent with each passing day. The Night's Watch takes no part in the politics of the Seven Kingdoms, declares the first builder, his weathered hands clasped behind his back. That principle has stood for 8,000 years. We cannot abandon it now. Can we not? Asks the first ranger, his scarred face grim in the firelight. What happens to our principles if there are no Seven Kingdoms left to protect? If the realm tears itself apart while we stand idle? Lord Commander Mormont sits silent at the head of the table, his grey beard catching shadows as he considers words that could reshape the Night's Watch forever. At 68, he has seen much in his years of service, but nothing like this. Never before has a brother been called to kingship. Never before has the Watch faced such a choice between duty and necessity. The vows are clear, insists the Lord Steward. Night gathers, and now my watch begins. I shall take no wife, hold no lands, father no children. I shall wear no crowns and win no glory. Jon Snow swore those words, same as any of us. Aye, he did, agrees another officer. And vows are considered permanent and sacred. Only death traditionally releases a man from his vows. That's the law. Jon turns from the window, his grey eyes reflecting the internal struggle that has consumed him for days. Then perhaps I should die, he says quietly. If death is the only release, perhaps that's what must happen. The words send a chill through the room. Every man present knows what Jon means. Not suicide, but the symbolic death that might free him from his vows while keeping his honor intact. There is precedent, Mormont says slowly, his rough voice carrying the weight of years. Men have been released from their vows in times of great need. Rare, yes, but not impossible. Name one, challenges the first builder. Mormont is quiet for a long moment. I cannot. But that doesn't mean it hasn't happened. The Watch keeps its records, but not all records survive 8,000 years. The debate that follows echoes through the ancient halls of Castle Black. Approximately 600 brothers garrison the wall, and word of their Lord Commander's dilemma spreads through their ranks like wildfire. In the common hall, grizzled veterans argue over bowls of stew. In the armory, smiths debate while sharpening swords. On the wall itself, sentries discuss the impossible choice facing their bastard brother. Some see only betrayal in the very consideration. The vows are sacred. To break them undermines everything the Night's Watch represents. If men can abandon their oaths for crowns, what's to stop them from abandoning their oaths for wives, for lands, for gold? Others see necessity. The realm bleeds. The North faces division and destruction. Sometimes the greater duty demands the sacrifice of the lesser one. "What do you want, Jon?" Mormont asks when the arguments reach a temporary lull. "Not what you think you should want. Not what honor demands. What do you want?" Jon looks around the table at men who have become his brothers in truth, if not in blood. Rangers who taught him to fight. Builders who showed him discipline. Stewards who helped him find his place. These 600 brothers are his family now, as much as the Starks ever were. "I want to serve," he says finally. "I want to do what's right. I want to protect the realm." "And which choice does that better?" Mormont presses. "Staying here to defend the wall, or going south to unite the North?" It's the question that has tormented Jon through sleepless nights. Both choices involve breaking vows, either his oath to the Night's Watch or his deeper oath to family and realm. Both involve abandoning people who need him. "The wildlings grow bolder," reports the first ranger, as if reading Jon's thoughts. "Increasing wildling activity on all fronts. Mance Rayder unites the tribes beyond the wall. They'll come south eventually, in numbers we've never seen. All the more reason to keep every man we have," argues the Lord Steward. "Or all the more reason to ensure the 7 kingdoms can defend themselves when that day comes," counters another officer. "A united North is stronger than a divided one. A strong North means fewer wildlings make it past our defenses." The arguments circle endlessly, each side finding merit in their position, each side finding flaws in their opponents. But beneath the debate lies a deeper truth. The Night's Watch faces a crisis of relevance. They guard the wall against threats the realm has forgotten, serving kingdoms that no longer remember their purpose. If the 7 kingdoms destroy themselves in civil war, what does the Night's Watch become? Guardians of ruins? Protectors of ash? "There's another consideration," says one of the officers quietly. "If Jon goes south, he takes knowledge of the wall with him. Knowledge of our weaknesses, our defenses, our numbers." The suggestion hangs in the air like poison. The idea that Jon might betray the Watcher's secrets seems impossible. But then, so did the idea of a sworn brother abandoning his vows for a crown. "Jon Snow would die before betraying the Night's Watch," Mormont states firmly. "Whatever choice he makes, his honor remains intact." But doubt, once planted, grows like weeds in fertile soil. Some brothers begin to question not just Jon's loyalty, but the wisdom of allowing any man to leave their ranks alive. The precedent could prove dangerous. What if other brothers demand release to pursue their own ambitions? As the night deepens, the debate takes on a desperate edge. Ravens arrive with fresh news from the south. Joffrey's threats, northern division, the growing pressure for Jon to accept or reject the crown. Each message makes the choice more urgent and more impossible. "Time runs short," Mormont observes. "The lords won't wait forever for an answer. If Jon doesn't decide soon, they'll decide for him." "Then perhaps that's for the best," suggests the first builder. "Let them crown Robb Stark and end this madness." "And if Robb Stark cannot unite the North?" asks the first ranger. "If the division deepens and the realm fractures, do we bear responsibility for standing aside when we might have helped?" The question strikes at the heart of their purpose. The Night's Watch exists to protect the realm, but what happens when protecting the realm requires abandoning their post? Jon moves back to the window, pressing his palm against the cold stone. Beyond the wall lies darkness, literal and metaphorical. ancient enemies stir in the far north. Wildling armies gather under kings the south has never heard of. And here, on the wall that has protected the realm for millennia, 600 brothers debate whether their duty lies in the past or the future. "I need time," Jon says finally. "Time to think, to pray, to find the answer that serves the realm best." "Time is a luxury we don't have," Mormont replies, but his voice is gentle. The ravens demand answers. The lords grow impatient. The crown threatens retribution. "Then give me until dawn," Jon says. "I'll have my answer by then." The officers disperse slowly, each carrying the weight of unprecedented choice. Some return to their duties with heavy hearts. Others seek counsel in prayer or drink or the companionship of their sworn brothers. All understand that whatever decision emerges from this night will change the Night's Watch forever. Jon remains at the window long after the others leave, staring into the darkness that has defined his life since taking the Black. Somewhere in that darkness, ancient enemies prepare for wars the realm cannot imagine. Somewhere in that darkness, the true test of the Night's Watch waits. But first, the Night's Watch must survive this test. The test of choosing between duty and duty, between oath and oath, between the past they've sworn to serve and the future they might be called to shape. The bastard who dreamed of honor faces a choice no amount of honor can make easy. By dawn, Jon Snow must decide not just his own fate, but the fate of the ancient order that gave his life meaning. The Night's Watch has stood for 8,000 years. Whatever Jon chooses, it will never be the same again. The Great Hall of Riverrun holds its breath as the final debate begins. 7 days have passed since the Northern Lords first spoke Jon Snow's name, and the combined Northern and Riverlands forces can wait no longer for resolution. The banners that hang from the ancient rafters, dire wolf and trout, tower and tree, bear witness to a moment that will reshape the North forever. Robb Stark sits straighter in his chair than he has in days, his auburn hair combed back and his blue eyes burning with quiet determination. At 15, he has learned that kingship is not claimed, but earned, not inherited, but fought for. Today he will discover whether his victories on the battlefield translate to victory in the hall. Catelyn Stark stands beside her son, her own auburn hair arranged in the elaborate style of a great lady, her blue eyes reflecting both pride and fear. At 34, she has seen enough of politics to know that today's decision will echo through generations. She watches the assembled lords with the intensity of a mother wolf protecting her cub. Theon Greyjoy positions himself where he can see every face in the hall, his dark hair falling across sharp features that reveal nothing of his thoughts. At 19, he has become the bridge between two worlds, the North that raised him and the Iron Islands that birthed him. Today, his choice will speak for more than just himself. "We cannot delay any longer," declares a northern lord from the Umber contingent. "Ravens fly south daily, carrying news of our division. Every moment we hesitate strengthens our enemies." "Then let us end the hesitation," responds a river lord. "The question is simple. Which Stark can best lead us to victory?" The question is anything but simple, and every man in the hall knows it. The debate that follows carries the weight of desperate necessity, as lords who have bled together now struggle to remain united. "Robb Stark has proven himself in battle," argues a supporter, his weathered face earnest. "He has never lost an engagement. He commands loyalty from his men. He is the rightful heir of Ned Stark." "And Jon Snow has proven himself in service," counters another voice. "He has learned discipline at the wall. He has no ambitions beyond duty. He carries his father's honor without his father's complications. The reference to Ned's fate hangs unspoken, but understood. Honor killed the Wolf of Winterfell. Perhaps pragmatism might serve his sons better. The wall is not the battlefield, Catelyn interjects, her voice carrying clearly through the hall. Jon Snow has never commanded armies, never faced the burden of life and death decisions for thousands of men. How do we know he can bear that weight? How did we know Robb could bear it? Comes the response. Both are young. Both are untested in their own ways. The question is, which offers the North the better path forward? Theon steps forward, and the hall falls silent. His words will carry weight precisely because he stands outside the competing factions, neither fully northern nor Riverlander, neither sworn to Robb through blood, nor bound to Jon through sentiment. I've known both men since boyhood, Theon says, his voice steady and clear. I've seen them grow from children into the men they are today. Both have strengths. Both have earned respect. Then choose, demands a River Lord. Which would you follow? The question hangs in the air like smoke from a funeral pyre. Every eye in the hall fixes on Theon, waiting for the words that will tip the balance one way or another. Theon looks at Robb, remembering the boy who accepted him as a brother, despite his birth. He thinks of Jon, remembering the bastard who understood what it meant to stand apart from the family that claimed you. Both deserve loyalty. Both deserve kingship. Both deserve better than the choice before them. I would follow either, Theon says finally. But if I must choose... He pauses, knowing his next words will wound one brother to crown another. I choose the one who best serves the realm, not the one who best serves himself. The cryptic answer satisfies no one. But before anyone can press him further, a commotion erupts from the back of the hall. A travel-stained rider enters, bearing the black of the Night's Watch. The messenger's presence changes everything. Jon Snow has sent his answer. The letter is brief, written in Jon's careful hand. Its words strike the hall like thunder. I am honored by the Lord's consideration, but I cannot accept what is offered. I have sworn sacred vows to the Night's Watch. I shall hold no crowns and win no glory. My duty lies on the wall, defending the realm from the darkness that gathers beyond. I pray the Lords will unite behind my true-born brother, Robb Stark, rightful heir of Winterfell and worthy king in the north. The realm needs unity, not division. Choose wisely, and may the gods preserve the north. The silence that follows is deafening. The letter has answered the question that has tormented them for a week, but not in the way anyone expected. Jon Snow has chosen duty over ambition, vows over crowns, the wall over the throne. Well, says a northern lord quietly, that settles it. But does it? The lords who supported Jon's claim stare at the letter as if its words might change. Some seem relieved. The crisis has passed without requiring them to choose between brothers. Others appear frustrated, convinced that Jon was the North's best hope, and that his refusal dooms them all. My son is the rightful king in the North, Catelyn says, her voice ringing with triumph and relief. He has always been the rightful king. Now there can be no question. No question of legitimacy, agrees a River Lord. But the questions that drove us to consider Jon Snow remain. Is Robb ready for this burden? Can he unite the North and hold it against what's coming? Robb himself has remained silent through Jon's letter and its aftermath. Now he rises, and something in his bearing has changed. The weight of inevitable kingship settles on his shoulders like a cloak. I didn't seek this crown, Robb says, his young voice carrying new authority. I would have been content to follow Jon if he had accepted it. But he has chosen his path, and I must choose mine. He moves to the center of the hall, where all can see him clearly. I am young. I am untested. I have made mistakes, and will make more. But I am here. I am ready. And I will not fail the North. The speech is simple, direct, honest about weaknesses, while promising strength. It carries more weight than flowery words or grand promises. The question now, Robb continues, is whether you will have me. I cannot command your loyalty. I must earn it. I cannot demand your faith. I must prove worthy of it. But if you will follow me, I swear by the old gods and the new that I will spend my life defending the North and its people. The lords exchange glances, weighing the young man before them against the burdens they all face. The military considerations that have driven their debate remain unchanged. The combined Northern and Riverlands forces still need unified leadership. The threats from the south still demand response. One by one, lords begin to speak their support. Not with the wild enthusiasm that might have greeted Jon Snow's acceptance, but with the steady determination of men choosing the path before them rather than the path they might have preferred. House Mormont stands with Robb Stark, declares a gruff northern lord. He has led us true so far. The Riverlands follow where the Tullys lead, says another. If Lady Catelyn supports her son's claim, so do we. The momentum builds slowly but inexorably. Lords who had wavered between the brothers now unite behind the one who stands before them. Not because Robb is perfect, but because he is present, committed, and willing to bear the burden they need someone to carry. When the calling of houses is complete, Robb Stark stands as the chosen king in the North, not by acclamation or wild celebration, but by the sober determination of lords who understand the weight of their decision. Theon steps forward and kneels before his foster brother, the gesture symbolic of the broader unity the North desperately needs. The Iron Islands remember their debt to House Stark, he says formally. I pledge my sword to King Robb. Others follow, and soon the great hall echoes with the sound of knees meeting stone and voices swearing fealty. The political crisis that threatened to tear the North apart ends not with division, but with unity, hard-earned, deliberately chosen, and precious beyond measure. As the ceremonies conclude, Catelyn allows herself a moment of relief. Her son is king. The North is united. The threats they face remain enormous, but they will face them together. Robb wears his new authority like armor, heavy, necessary, and not entirely comfortable. But he wears it, and that is what matters. The boy who might have been content to follow has become the king the North needs him to be. The Riverlands have chosen. The North has spoken. Now comes the harder task, proving worthy of the trust that has been placed in a 15-year-old king and the lords who follow him into an uncertain future. The great hall of Riverrun has been transformed for a ceremony not seen in 300 years. Banners of every northern house hang from the ancient rafters, their sigils catching the light of 100 torches. The combined Northern and Riverlands forces gather in witness as history prepares to turn upon its hinges. Today, the North will have a king again. Robb Stark stands before the high table, no longer the uncertain boy who arrived at Riverrun weeks ago. At 15, he has grown into his authority the way young trees grow toward sunlight, inevitably, naturally, despite the storms that might bend them. His auburn hair has been combed back in the manner of kings, and his blue eyes reflect the weight of 8,000 years of Stark tradition settling upon his shoulders. The ceremony begins with the reading of ancient words, spoken by a northern lord whose weathered voice carries the authority of generations. Hear now the words of House Stark, spoken in the sight of gods and men. For 8,000 years, the Starks have ruled from Winterfell. For 8,000 years, the North has followed the direwolf banner. Today, we reclaim what was taken by conquest and restore what was surrendered through wisdom. Catelyn Stark watches from her place of honor, her auburn hair arranged in the elaborate braids of a queen mother. At 34, she has seen her son grow from child to commander to king in the span of months. Pride and fear war in her blue eyes as she witnesses the moment that will either secure his legacy or doom him to an early grave. The last king in the North was Torrhen Stark, who knelt to Aegon the Conqueror 300 years past. The speaker continues, for 3 centuries, the North has bent the knee to southern kings. Today, we break that chain and reclaim our sovereignty. The words resonate through the hall like thunder. Every man present understands their significance. This is not merely the crowning of a king, but the birth of a new kingdom. Northern independence claims based on pre-conquest sovereignty are not taken lightly, particularly when they require breaking 300 years of submission to the Iron Throne. Theon Greyjoy stands among the assembled lords, his dark hair swept back from sharp features that reveal careful thought. At 19, he understands better than most the risks of what they attempt. His own father once tried to break free from Robert Baratheon's rule. The memory of that failure weighs heavily as he watches another rebellion take shape. But this feels different. This feels necessary. The North has bled for southern kings long enough. A northern lord steps forward, bearing an ancient crown, not the elaborate creation of southern smiths, but a simple circlet of hammered iron set with small gems. It is the crown of the old kings in the North, preserved through centuries of southern rule as a reminder of what was lost. This crown belonged to the kings of winter, the Lord announces. It was worn by Torrhen Stark when he rode south to face Aegon's dragons. Today, it returns to its rightful place. Robb kneels before the assembled lords, his head bowed as the weight of decision settles upon him one final time. He could still refuse. He could still choose the safer path of acknowledging some southern king's authority. But as he looks up at the faces surrounding him, northern lords, Riverrun's allies, men who have followed him into battle and now ask him to lead them into war, he knows there is no turning back. Do you, Robb of House Stark, swear before gods and men to defend the North and its people? Asks the Lord holding the crown. I do so swear, Robb replies, his young voice carrying clearly through the hall. Do you swear to rule with justice, to protect the innocent, to honor the ancient ways of your fathers? I do so swear. Do you swear to maintain the independence of the North against all enemies, southern and northern, living and dead? The final oath carries extra weight in light of the threats gathering beyond the wall. Robb's answer commits him not just to political independence, but to defending the ancient realm against whatever darkness may come. I do so swear, by the old gods and the new. The crown settles upon Robb's auburn head with surprising gentleness. For all its symbolic weight, the iron circlet is lighter than expected, a reminder that kingship's burden lies not in its symbols, but in its responsibilities. Rise, Robb Stark, first of his name, king in the North, and of the Trident. The title encompasses both the traditional Northern Kingdom and their new Riverlands alliance. It acknowledges political reality while claiming ancient right. Robb rises slowly, and the transformation is complete. The boy who knelt is gone, replaced by a king who must now prove worthy of the crown he wears. The hall erupts in acclaim, not the wild celebration of a festival, but the steady, determined cheering of men who understand they have just declared war on the most powerful throne in Westeros. "The king in the north!" the lords cry, and the words echo off of stone walls that have not heard them for 3 centuries. "The king in the north!" One by one, the lords renew their oaths of fealty. Each house speaks its pledge. Each banner dips in acknowledgement of their chosen king. The ceremony takes hours, but every moment matters. These oaths will be remembered when the storms of war test every man's resolve. Theon steps forward when his turn comes, kneeling before his foster brother with genuine reverence. "House Greyjoy remembers its debts," he says formally. "The Iron Islands pledge their support to the king in the north." The pledge carries extra significance, given Theon's unique position. His support speaks for more than just personal loyalty. It represents the possibility of alliance with his father's kingdom, of ships to supplement northern strength. When the oath-taking concludes, Robb addresses his new subjects for the first time as their king. His words are simple, direct, honest about the challenges they face. "Lords of the North and Trident, I did not seek this crown, but I accept its burden gladly. The road before us is hard. The enemies we face are powerful. The price of independence will be paid in blood and sacrifice." He pauses, letting his words sink in before continuing. "But we fight for something worth the cost. We fight for the right to rule ourselves, to follow our own customs, to live by our own laws. We fight for the memory of every Northman who died serving southern kings who cared nothing for our lives or our honor." The passion in his voice grows as he speaks, fed by the energy of the moment and the weight of responsibility. 300 years ago, Torrhen Stark knelt to save the North from dragonfire. Today, we stand to save the North from something worse: the slow death of surrender, the grinding erosion of everything that makes us who we are. The words strike their target. Every man in the hall has felt the sting of Southern contempt, the burden of fighting wars that serve Southern interests, the humiliation of watching their values mocked by kings who see them as useful fools. "I cannot promise you victory," Robb concludes. "I cannot promise you easy triumphs or quick resolution. But I can promise you this: we will fight with honor, we will stand together, and we will never again kneel to kings who despise us." The acclaim that follows shakes the foundations of Riverrun. Men who have followed Robb into battle now follow him into rebellion, their voices raised in a roar that speaks of determination forged in shared struggle. As the ceremony concludes, and the lords disperse to prepare for the wars to come, Catelyn approaches her son, her king, with tears in her eyes. "Your father would be proud," she whispers, and for a moment the king becomes a boy again, needing his mother's approval more than all the crowns in Westeros. But the moment passes quickly. There is too much to do, too many preparations to make, too many letters to write and ravens to send. The North has a king again, but proving worthy of that crown will require more than ceremonies and oaths. Outside Riverrun's walls, armies gather and enemies plot. The easy part, claiming the crown, is over. Now comes the hard part, keeping it. The king in the north has risen. Whether he can stand remains to be seen. The Iron Throne Room erupts in chaos as the latest raven from the north is read aloud. King Joffrey Baratheon sits rigid upon the twisted seat of swords, his golden hair catching the light that streams through the high windows. At 12, his handsome features are twisted with a rage that makes even his most loyal courtiers step back in fear. "King in the North," Joffrey's voice cracks with fury and disbelief. They dare crown that Stark whelp. They dare declare independence from their rightful king. The royal advisors exchange nervous glances as they watch their boy king process the news from Riverrun. The ceremony that crowned Robb Stark has sent shockwaves through the capital, threatening everything they thought they understood about loyalty and legitimacy. "Your Grace," ventures the Grand Maester carefully, "the Northern Rebellion was predictable. But this formal coronation represents something more dangerous. They're not just rebelling, they're declaring themselves a separate kingdom entirely." "Then they've chosen war," Joffrey snarls, his green eyes burning with malicious pleasure. "They think they can hide behind their walls of ice and snow? They think their pet wolf can protect them from the full might of the Iron Throne?" The boy king rises from his seat, pacing before the twisted metal with the restless energy of youth and fury. His courtiers watch nervously, knowing that Joffrey's rages often lead to blood and suffering. "Summon the small council," Joffrey commands. "Send ravens to every loyal house from the Reach to Dawn. The crown calls its banners. We'll crush this rebellion and drag the Stark pretender to King's Landing in chains." As the orders fly through the Red Keep, another figure watches the proceedings with growing dread. Sansa Stark stands in the shadows of the throne room, her auburn hair braided in the southern fashion, her blue eyes carefully empty of expression. At 12, she has learned to become invisible when kings rage. But this rage touches her directly. She is Robb Stark's sister, the sister of the newly crowned king in the north. Her value as a hostage has just increased exponentially, and she knows with sick certainty that her captivity is about to become far more dangerous. "Bring me Sansa Stark," Joffrey calls, his voice carrying across the throne room like a whip crack. Sansa approaches the Iron Throne with careful steps, her hands folded before her in perfect courtly manner. She has practiced this walk, this posture, this expression of neutral compliance until they feel more natural than her own thoughts. "Your Grace," she says with a perfect curtsy. "Sansa." Joffrey's tone is deceptively pleasant, like honey poured over poison. "Such wonderful news from the north. Your brother has been playing at being a king." "I'm sure I don't know what your Grace means," Sansa replies carefully. "The affairs of traitors are no concern of mine." "Oh, but they are." Joffrey's smile is cold and predatory. "You see, your brother's little coronation ceremony makes you very valuable indeed. The sister of a rebel king. That's worth something, don't you think?" The threat in his words is unmistakable. Sansa keeps her expression neutral, but inside her chest, her heart pounds like a trapped bird against the cage of her ribs. "I serve at your Grace's pleasure," she says quietly. "As always." "Yes, you do." Joffrey descends the steps of the Iron Throne slowly, savoring each word. "And I'm going to make sure your dear brother understands exactly what that means." The preparations that follow transform King's Landing into a hive of military activity. Ravens fly to every corner of the realm carrying the crown's call to war. The great houses of the south, Tyrell, Martell, Redwyne, Hightower, receive summons to prove their loyalty with swords and spears. In the Red Keep's war room, maps of Westeros spread across oak tables as royal advisors plan the campaign against the north. Pins mark loyalist strongholds, supply routes, potential battlefields. The boy king may rage like a child, but his advisors understand the magnitude of the task before them. "The north is vast and defensible," one advisor observes, tracing routes across the map with his finger. "Their enemies have always struggled with the distances, the weather, the terrain." "But they're isolated now," counters another. "Cut off from southern allies, outnumbered, dependent on their own resources. if we can force them into open battle. The Riverlands complicate matters, a third voice interjects. House Tully's support gives the rebels strategic depth. They control key river crossings, fertile lands, strong castles. The discussion continues through the day and into the night. For all their confidence, the royal advisors understand that crushing the North will require more than righteous anger. It will require careful planning, overwhelming force, and ruthless execution. Meanwhile, ravens carry more than military orders. They carry threats, ultimatums, and promises of terrible retribution for any who support the Northern Rebellion. Lords who might have wavered between loyalties find themselves forced to choose sides, as the crown demands absolute commitment. Any house that aids the Stark pretender will be considered in rebellion against the Iron Throne, the ravens declare. Their lands will be forfeit, their titles stripped, their lines ended. The crown's mercy is reserved for those who prove their loyalty with action. The threats have their intended effect. Some northern houses waver, intimidated by the prospect of facing the full might of the Seven Kingdoms, but others harden their resolve, insulted by southern arrogance and determined to stand with their chosen king. In the great halls of southern castles, lords debate the wisdom of the crown's aggressive stance. Some argue for caution, pointing out that the North has been conquered before, but never truly held. Others call for swift action, insisting that rebellion must be crushed before it spreads. If we allow the North to break away, warns a Reach Lord, what's to stop the Iron Islands from following? Or Dawn? The realm could fracture entirely. Better to risk fracture than guarantee it, responds another. Push the North too hard, and we'll create martyrs. Show them the crown's strength, yes, but also its mercy. But mercy is not in Joffrey's vocabulary. The boy king sees only enemies to be crushed, traitors to be punished, rebels to be made examples of. His youth and cruelty combine to create a dangerous combination, the power of kingship wielded without wisdom or restraint. As the days pass, King's Landing fills with southern lords answering the crown's call. The sight of their banners streaming into the capital sends a clear message. The Iron Throne still commands vast loyalty, vast resources, vast military might. The Northern Rebellion may be bold, but it faces overwhelming odds. Yet for all their preparations, the Southern Lords cannot shake a sense of unease. The North has always been different, always been apart from the rest of the realm. Its people follow different gods, honor different customs, think different thoughts. Conquering such a place requires more than superior numbers. It requires understanding what drives them to rebel. That understanding is precisely what the boy king lacks. Joffrey sees only disobedience where he might see desperation, only treachery where he might see principle. His rage blinds him to the deeper currents that drive the Northern Rebellion, the legitimate grievances that fuel their defiance. In her chambers high in the Red Keep, Sansa Stark writes letter after letter under close supervision. Each message carries threats designed to break her brother's resolve, promises of what will happen to the traitor's sister if the rebellion continues. But as she writes, Sansa allows herself a moment of fierce pride. Her brother is a king. Her family stands unconquered, despite everything the Lannisters have done to them. Whatever happens to her, the North remembers. The letters will fly north, carrying threats and ultimatums. The armies will march, carrying steel and fire. The war that was inevitable since Ned Stark's death will finally begin in earnest. But the boy king who commands the Iron Throne has made a crucial error. He believes that fear and force can substitute for justice and mercy. He believes that breaking spirits is the same as winning loyalty. He is about to learn the difference, and the lesson will be written in blood across the battlefields of Westeros. The South has spoken. The North has answered. Now comes the reckoning that will determine whether the realm stands united or falls divided. And in the middle of it all, a 12-year-old girl sits in a tower room and prays to gods old and new that her brother the king will prove worthy of the crown he wears and the cause he represents. The war for the Seven Kingdoms has truly begun. The ravens fly between Riverrun and Castle Black with increasing frequency, carrying words that bridge the gap between duty and family, between crown and vows. In the solar of Riverrun's great tower, King Robb Stark reads his bastard brother's latest letter by candlelight, his auburn hair catching the golden glow as his blue eyes scan the familiar script. At 15, Robb has grown into the weight of kingship these past weeks, but Jon's counsel still carries the voice of the brother who knew him best. Even separated by hundreds of miles, and divided by the choices that shaped their destinies, the bond between them remains unbroken. Jon writes of wildling movements beyond the wall, Robb tells the assembled war council, his voice carrying the authority of a king but the warmth of a brother. Massive raids, tribal alliances, preparations for something larger. He fears we may face enemies on two fronts before this is over. Catelyn Stark sits at her son's right hand, her auburn hair now showing threads of silver that speak of the burdens she carries. At 34, she has watched her family scattered by war and politics. But tonight, her eldest son reads words from the bastard she once feared would steal his birthright. The irony is not lost on her. "What does he counsel?" she asks, surprising herself with genuine interest in Jon's strategic thinking. Robb sets the letter down carefully, as if the parchment itself were precious. Unity. He says the realm's divisions make it vulnerable to threats from outside our borders. If we're too busy fighting each other, we won't be ready for what comes from the darkness. Theon Greyjoy stands near the great map that dominates the Solar's central table, his dark hair swept back as he studies the markers that represent armies, castles, and strategic positions. At 19, he has become one of Robb's most trusted advisors, his unique perspective as both Northman and Islander, proving invaluable in planning the campaigns ahead. "Your brother sees the larger picture," Theon observes, tracing supply routes with his finger. "But we can't fight mystical threats if we don't survive the very real armies marching north from King's Landing." The truth of it settles over the room like a heavy cloak. Whatever dangers lurk beyond the wall, the immediate threat comes from the south, from Joffrey's rage and the vast armies gathering under the crown's banners. The combined Northern and Riverlands forces give us strategic depth, reports one of Robb's military advisors, a grizzled veteran whose scars speak of decades of warfare. But we're still outnumbered. The Crown can call on the Reach, the Westerlands, parts of the Stormlands. We need allies. "Or we need to make our enemies fight each other instead of us," Theon suggests, his voice carrying the cunning that flows in Greyjoy blood. The Crown's harsh ultimatums have made enemies as well as allies. Not every southern house is eager to bleed for a boy king's pride. The discussion that follows stretches into the night as they plan campaigns that will determine the fate of kingdoms. Maps spread across oak tables show possible battle lines, supply routes, defensive positions. Each decision carries the weight of thousands of lives, but underlying every strategic consideration is a more personal concern. Sansa Stark, the king's sister, held captive in the Red Keep and growing more valuable as a hostage with each passing day. "She's the key to everything," Catelyn says quietly, her maternal fear bleeding through her political facade. As long as they hold her, they hold a blade to our throat. Every move we make must consider what they might do to her in response. Robb's jaw tightens at the mention of his sister's plight. The weight of kingship includes the weight of family, and knowing that Sansa suffers for his choices cuts deeper than any sword. Jon has thoughts on that as well, Robb says, lifting another section of the letter. He writes of the tunnels beneath King's Landing, the passages used to smuggle goods and people. The Night's Watch has dealings with smugglers and traders who know those routes. The suggestion hangs in the air with dangerous possibility. A rescue mission deep in enemy territory, using knowledge that might or might not be reliable, risking everything for one person, even if that person is the king's sister. It's madness, one advisor declares. The risk is too great. The risk of leaving her there is greater, Theon counters. Every day she remains in Joffrey's hands, she becomes a more powerful weapon against us. Better to risk a rescue mission than guarantee her use as leverage. Catelyn looks between her son and his closest friend, seeing the conflict that tears at both of them. Family versus strategy, heart versus head, the personal cost of political choices. What does Jon suggest specifically? She asks, leaning forward despite herself. Robb smooths the letter, reading carefully. He knows smugglers who work the Black Water, men who've dealt with the Watch for years. Desperate men who might be bought if the price is right. He thinks they might be willing to help, for gold and the promise of safe passage north. The plan that emerges over the following hours is complex and dangerous, requiring careful timing and substantial risk. But it offers something precious, hope that Sansa might be saved before the larger war consumes everything. We'll need a distraction, Theon points out, studying the map of King's Landing that one of the advisors has produced. Something to draw attention away from the Red Keep while the rescue attempt is made. The Riverlands can provide that, suggests another voice. Raids along the King's Road, attacks on supply convoys, threats to Lannister holdings, make them think we're preparing a major offensive from the east. While the real rescue comes from the water, Robb finishes, seeing the strategy take shape. Jon's smugglers use the tunnels to get our people into the Red Keep, extract Sansa, and get her to a ship before anyone realizes she's gone. The audacity of it takes their breath away. Breaking into the heart of enemy power, stealing away the king's most valuable hostage, escaping through a city filled with enemies. It sounds like something from a song, not a realistic military operation. But desperate times demand desperate measures, and the alternative, leaving Sansa in Joffrey's hands while the war escalates, is unthinkable. I'll lead the mission, Theon says quietly, and the room falls silent. I know ships, I know desperate men, and I'm expendable in ways that others aren't. If this goes wrong, the North can't afford to lose its king. You're not expendable, Robb says firmly. You're my brother in all the ways that matter. The words carry weight beyond their simple meaning. In claiming Theon as brother, Robb acknowledges the bonds that transcend blood, the loyalty that chooses itself rather than being inherited. Which is why I have to do this, Theon replies. Brothers protect each other. Let me protect our sister. The debate continues, but the decision has already been made, in everything but words. The rescue mission will go forward, despite its risks, because some things matter more than strategic advantage or political calculation. As the council disperses to begin detailed planning, Robb remains in the solar with his mother, staring at the letter from Jon that started it all. The bond between the brothers remains strong, despite the different paths their duties have forced them to walk. He chose his vows over a crown, Catelyn observes, breaking the comfortable silence. I hated him for existing, but he chose honor over ambition. Your father would have been proud. He is proud, Robb corrects gently. Somewhere, father knows that both his sons chose duty over desire. Jon kept his vows. I accepted the crown I never wanted. We both serve the realm in our own ways. The next morning brings fresh ravens carrying Jon's detailed intelligence about King's Landing's defences, smuggling routes, guard rotations, and potential allies within the city. His network of contacts, built through years of Night's Watch business, proves invaluable in planning the impossible mission ahead. The war for the Seven Kingdoms continues on multiple fronts: political, military, and personal. But tonight, in the planning chambers of Riverrun, family bonds prove stronger than the forces that would tear them apart. Brothers separated by duty remain united by love. And sometimes, love is the strongest strategy of all. The rescue of Sansa Stark begins to take shape, born from the counsel of a bastard who chose the wall over a crown, planned by a king who puts family before politics, and led by a friend who proves that loyalty creates kinship stronger than blood. In the morning, they will begin the mission that could save a sister, or doom a kingdom. But tonight, they plan with the unity that makes the North unconquerable, whatever the cost. The wolves hunt as a pack, even when separated by distance and duty, and their prey should be very afraid indeed. The ship cuts through the dark waters of Blackwater Bay like a knife through silk, its black sails barely visible against the moonless night. Theon Greyjoy stands at the prow, his dark hair whipping in the salt wind as King's Landing grows larger on the horizon. At 19, he has sailed many dangerous waters, but none more treacherous than these. Behind him, a dozen hand-picked men check weapons and ropes one final time. They are the best the North has to offer. Rangers, smugglers, and soldiers who have sworn to retrieve Sansa Stark from the heart of enemy territory, or die in the attempt. Each man knows the price of failure will be measured not just in their own blood, but in the life of the girl they've come to save. "Signal from the shore," whispers the ship's captain, a weathered smuggler whose loyalty has been bought with northern gold and promises of safe passage. 3 flashes, the way is clear. The intelligence that brought them this far came from multiple sources. Jon Snow's contacts among the Night's Watch smugglers provided maps of the Red Keep's forgotten tunnels. Bran Stark's ravens from Winterfell carried word of guard rotations observed by servants with northern sympathies. Most crucially, gold and desperation had turned a handful of Red Keep servants into allies willing to risk everything for the chance to strike back at their boy king. Theon adjusts the worn cloak that disguises his noble bearing, transforming him from heir to the Iron Islands into just another smuggler braving the capital's dangerous waters. His sharp features catch the moonlight briefly before disappearing back into shadow. "Remember," he tells his men quietly, "we're ghosts tonight, in and out without a trace. No heroics, no unnecessary killing. We get the girl and we get gone." The longboat slides through the black water toward a drainage outlet that empties into the bay beneath the Red Keep. The entrance is barely wide enough for a man to crawl through, hidden among the rocks where the castle's waste flows into the sea. It smells of rot and worse things, but it leads to tunnels that wind beneath Aegon's Hill like the roots of some vast stone tree. Inside the tunnel, their guide waits, a thin man with nervous eyes and hands that shake despite the gold they've pressed into his palms. He was once a stable boy in Winterfell before seeking his fortune in the south. Now he risks his life for the daughter of the lord he once served. "Lady Sansa is in the Maiden Vault," he whispers, his voice barely audible above the drip of water from ancient stones. 3 guards at the base of the tower, 2 more on her floor. They change at midnight and dawn. Theon checks the small hourglass on his belt, stolen from a Meister's solar and worth more than gold tonight for its precision. 2 hours until dawn. Time enough if everything goes according to plan. The climb through the tunnel system tests every man's nerve. These passages were old when Aegon landed on Blackwater Bay, carved by forgotten kings for forgotten purposes. Some lead to wine cellars and storerooms. Others open into oubliettes where prisoners rot in darkness. One wrong turn could lead them into a maze from which there is no escape. But their guide knows the way, and fear gives him sure footing even in the treacherous darkness. They emerge in a storage cellar beneath the Red Keep's kitchens, surrounded by sacks of flour and barrels of ale that could feed an army. Above their heads, the occasional footstep reminds them that they crawl through the belly of the beast. From Winterfell, Bran's intelligence proves invaluable. His ravens have carried word from servants who observe the patterns of guard changes, the routines of night watches, the habits of those who hold power over life and death in the capital. The 80-year-old Lord of Winterfell may be paralyzed in body, but his mind remains sharp as any sword. The guards at the Maiden Vault's base die quietly, professional work done by men who understand that mercy tonight means death for everyone they've left behind. The bodies are hidden in shadows where they won't be found until long after the rescue is complete. Climbing the tower's spiral stairs, Theon thinks of Sansa as he last saw her. A girl of 12, with her mother's auburn hair and her father's sense of honor, unprepared for the cruelties that southern politics would visit upon her. Now she sits captive in a tower, held as leverage against the brother who wears a crown and the family who refuses to kneel. The door to Sansa's chamber is locked, but Northern Gold has purchased keys along with loyalty. The tumblers turn with barely a whisper, and Theon steps into moonlight that streams through tall windows overlooking the city that holds his king's sister captive. Sansa Stark sits by her window, still dressed despite the late hour, her auburn hair loose around her shoulders like a copper waterfall. At 12, captivity has aged her in ways that have nothing to do with years, but her blue eyes still hold the spark that marks her as Ned Stark's daughter. She turns at the sound of the opening door, expecting guards or worse. Instead, she sees a familiar face, marked by years and weather, but unmistakably the boy who grew up alongside her at Winterfell. "Theon?" Her voice is barely a whisper, afraid to hope. "Hello, little sister," he says with a grin that doesn't quite hide his own relief. "Robb sent me to bring you home." The tears that follow are silent but profound. The release of months of fear and isolation, the sudden possibility that captivity might not be forever, that family might still exist beyond these walls of stone and cruelty. "Is it really you?" she asks, reaching out tentatively, as if he might vanish at her touch. "It's me, and we're leaving. Now." The escape through the Red Keep's tunnels reverses their path, but adds new dangers. Sansa, for all her courage, is not trained for this kind of desperate flight through darkness. Her court dress catches on stone edges, and her soft shoes slip on wet stones. But she follows without complaint, understanding that their lives depend on speed and silence. Behind them, the Red Keep sleeps in ignorance of the theft occurring in its heart. Joffrey dreams of crushing rebellions, while his most valuable hostage slips away through passages his guards never knew existed. The irony would be delicious if the stakes weren't so deadly. The longboat waits where they left it, manned by sailors whose loyalty runs deeper than gold. As Sansa settles into the boat's bottom, wrapped in Theon's cloak against the bay's chill, Winterfell's ravens carry word north that the mission proceeds as planned. But the real test comes when dawn breaks over King's Landing, and the Red Keep wakes to discover that Sansa Stark has vanished like morning mist. The rage that follows will shake the foundations of the Iron Throne and transform the war from political necessity to personal vendetta. As their ship clears the mouth of Blackwater Bay and sets course for the north, Theon allows himself a moment of satisfaction. The boy who was raised between two worlds, Stark and Greyjoy, North and Islands, has chosen his side with action that speaks louder than any words. "What now?" Sansa asks, watching the lights of King's Landing fade into distance. "Now we go home," Theon replies. "Your brother has a crown to wear and a kingdom to defend, and you have a family that never stopped fighting to bring you home." The rescue of Sansa Stark proves that the North fights for more than political independence. It fights for family, for honor, for the bonds that no crown can break. The price of Robb's crown includes the risks his friends take to save his sister, the dangers his allies face to prove their loyalty. In King's Landing, the discovery of Sansa's escape will transform Joffrey's anger into murderous rage. The boy king who thought himself invulnerable will learn that northern reach extends even into his own bedchamber. The war that was already inevitable becomes personal, and personal wars are the bloodiest of all. But tonight, under stars that shine on free water, a Stark daughter sails home to the family that never gave up on her. The price of crowns is paid in blood and sacrifice, but sometimes the payment purchases something precious beyond measure. The North remembers, and tonight it has acted on that memory with steel and cunning and the courage of men who understand that some things matter more than their own lives. Theon Greyjoy, heir to the Iron Islands, has proven himself worthy of the trust placed in him by a king and the love offered by a family that chose to claim him. In saving Sansa, he has saved something of himself as well, the part that chose Stark over Greyjoy, honor over ambition, family over blood. The ship sails north through waters that grow colder with each mile, carrying a precious cargo toward a kingdom that waits to welcome its daughter home. Behind them, the South prepares for war with new fury. Ahead of them, the North prepares to defend everything it holds dear. The rescue has succeeded, but the real battle has only just begun. The Great Hall of Winterfell has not seen such joy in generations. After months of war, division, and desperate uncertainty, the Stark family gathers once again beneath the banners of the Grey Direwolf. The ancient stones seem to breathe with relief as voices, long absent, echo off walls that have waited too long for their return. Sansa Stark sits at the high table between her brothers, her auburn hair catching the firelight as she struggles to believe her rescue was real and not some cruel dream. At 12, she has survived captivity in King's Landing through courage and cunning that would humble grown men. But here in Winterfell's familiar warmth, she allows herself to be a child again. Her blue eyes shine with tears of homecoming as she watches her family made whole once more. Robb Stark wears his crown with new confidence, the iron circlet that marks him as king in the North, resting easily on his auburn head. At 15, he has grown into his authority through trials that would have broken lesser men. But tonight, he is not a king holding court. He is a brother celebrating his sister's return. His blue eyes reflect the joy that fills the hall as he raises his cup in toast after toast to family, loyalty, and the bonds that no enemy can break. Bran Stark sits in his high-backed chair, no longer dwarfed by its size, but growing into the role of Lord of Winterfell. At 8, he has learned to command respect through wisdom rather than strength, and his dark eyes hold depths that speak of responsibilities shouldered too young. The paralysis that stole his legs cannot touch the strength that flows through his voice as he speaks of Winterfell's future. "Sister," Bran says, his young voice carrying clearly through the hall, "Winterfell has felt empty without you. Now it feels like home again." The words carry weight beyond their simple meaning. Winterfell is more than stone and timber. It is the heart of the North, the place where Stark loyalty begins and to which it always returns. With Sansa's rescue, that heart beats strong once more. Catelyn Stark watches her children with emotions too complex for words. At 34, she has seen her family scattered by war and reunited by courage, has watched boys become men and girls become survivors. Her auburn hair now shows silver at the temples, each strand earned through sleepless nights, worrying for children she could not protect. But tonight, protection matters less than presence. Her family is whole, and that wholeness makes every sacrifice worthwhile. Theon Greyjoy stands among the assembled lords, his dark hair swept back, and his sharp features reflecting quiet satisfaction. At 19, he has proven his loyalty through action rather than words, has chosen family over blood, and honor over ambition. The rescue mission that brought Sansa home also brought him something precious, the certainty that he belongs among these people, that the bonds forged in Winterfell's halls run deeper than the waters that separate islands from continents. As the celebration continues, ravens arrive bearing messages from across the north and beyond. The rescue of Sansa Stark has sent ripples throughout the Seven Kingdoms, proving that northern reach extends even into the heart of enemy territory. Some messages bring congratulations from ally houses. Others carry threats from southern lords who see the successful mission as an intolerable provocation. But one raven bears a message that matters more than all the rest. Words from Castle Black, from Jon Snow, written in his careful script and carrying the voice of the brother who chose duty over ambition, but never chose distance over love. Robb reads the letter aloud, his voice carrying Jon's words to every corner of the hall. "To my brother the king, my sister the rescued, my brother the lord, and my mother who raised us all, know that the wall celebrates your reunion, even as we maintain our watch. Sansa's rescue proves that the North fights for more than independence. We fight for family, for honor, for the bonds that make us stronger than our enemies believe possible. I am proud to serve the realm from here, knowing that you lead it from there. May the gods preserve the new kingdom you have built, and may the wolves of Winterfell howl long and loud. Your brother in all things that matter, Jon." The message brings both joy and melancholy. Joy for the love it expresses, melancholy for the brother who remains absent even in this moment of reunion. But his choice to stay at the wall serves the realm in ways that crowns cannot, and his sacrifice makes their victory possible. In the days that follow, Robb begins the work of establishing his new kingdom's laws and governance. The North has been independent before, but never in an age of ravens and roads, trade routes, and political complexity. Creating a kingdom that can stand against southern pressure while maintaining its northern character requires wisdom beyond his 15 years. "We are not trying to recreate the past," Robb tells his council, as they draft the laws that will govern the new kingdom. "We are building something new, a realm that honors our traditions while adapting to the world we actually inhabit. The laws they craft reflect northern values, justice tempered by mercy, strength balanced by wisdom, independence coupled with responsibility. They establish trade agreements with the free cities, defensive pacts with potential allies, and systems of governance that make the new kingdom more than just a rebellion against southern rule." Bran grows into his role as Lord of Winterfell with surprising grace. His physical limitations force him to rely on intelligence and diplomacy rather than martial prowess. But these prove to be exactly the skills Winterfell needs. He manages the castle with efficiency that would impress grown men, coordinates intelligence networks that span the north, and speaks for his brother the king with authority that no one questions. "I may not be able to climb towers anymore," Bran tells Sansa one afternoon as they sit in the Godswood, "but I can see farther from here than I ever could from up there." The wisdom in his words reflects the boy who has learned that strength comes in many forms, that leadership requires adaptation, and that serving others sometimes means accepting the limitations that force you to find new sources of power. Sansa herself begins to heal from her captivity, finding strength in familiar surroundings and the safety of family protection. Her experiences in King's Landing have changed her in ways that can never be undone, but they have also given her insights into southern politics that prove invaluable to her brother's kingdom. "They underestimate us," she tells Robb during one of their private conversations. "They think we're simple, uncultured, incapable of sophisticated thinking. That blindness is a weakness we can exploit." Her counsel helps shape the new kingdom's approach to southern relations, not the crude defiance that enemies expect, but the subtle diplomacy of a people who understand their opponents better than their opponents understand them. As winter deepens over the north, the new kingdom settles into the rhythms of independence. Trade flows along new routes. Alliances form with unexpected partners. The threat from the south remains real and dangerous, but the north faces it with unity that was absent when the crisis began. Letters continue to flow between Winterfell and Castle Black, maintaining the bond between the brothers who chose different paths but never chose different loyalties. Jon's reports of increasing wildling activity remind everyone that the threats facing the realm extend far beyond political boundaries, that independence means responsibility for defending against darkness that cares nothing for human kingdoms. But for now, in the warmth of Winterfell's halls, there is time for family, for celebration, for the simple joy of being together after months of separation and fear. The Stark children who, scattered like leaves in an autumn storm, have found their way home, and home has proven strong enough to shelter them all. Theon raises his cup one final time as the evening draws to a close, his voice carrying across the hall with genuine emotion. To the Starks of Winterfell, who remember their friends, protect their family, and prove that some bonds cannot be broken by distance or duty or the ambitions of southern kings. The North remembers, and tonight it celebrates. The cheer that follows shakes the ancient stones of Winterfell, a sound that carries across the snowy yards and beyond the castle walls, proclaiming to all who would hear that the North stands united, that the wolves run free, and that some victories are worth any price. The crown may be young on Robb's head, but it rests there by right of choice as well as birth. The kingdom may be new, but it stands on foundations 8,000 years old. The challenges ahead remain daunting, but they will be faced by a people united in purpose and strengthened by the knowledge that their independence was earned rather than given. As the fire burns low in Winterfell's great hearth, and the family finally retires to chambers they thought they might never see again, the North settles into its new reality. Independent, united, and ready to face whatever storms may come. The wolves are home, and winter is coming for their enemies. That's our theory. Westeros is a land filled with exciting stories and possibilities, and we love exploring them. If you want to accompany us on this journey across the Seven Kingdoms and beyond, then please like, share,